Hello again and welcome back to Wingot Plays Nomifactory. Well, I've made a little bit more progress through the quest book. I've made the various molds, fluid solidifiers, which basically allow you to melt down ingots and then get like gears, and there's ball and block molds as well. And this allows you to make gears for 4 ingots as opposed to the 8 that it was costing previously with the 4 rods and 4 plates, which is as opposed to the 12 that it was actually costing back when we first started. So definitely improving on resource usage there. The fluid extractor autoclave basically just takes a fluid and washes a ingredient. I've made the chemical reactor, which so far I've been using to make clay. So for that one, you just need to put in a piece of sand, a block of sand, into the chemical reactor here, along with water. You need dust. So the sand in a macerator makes dust, and then dust plus a bucket of water makes a block of clay. And so the blocks of clay plus pulsating dust make pulsating polymer clay, which is used for deep mob learning. The mod that I'm looking to work towards this episode. So far I think there was meant to be something there. String and something was meant to make the spider. String and rice ball. Oh, rice slime ball there. Awesome. So, let me just put away some of the spare stuff we've got. There we go. Now, I've done a little bit of work in the void base. Not super much, but I haven't shown you the new power setup. And I'm getting ready to move all these machines over. But when I move these machines over, I'm also probably going to want to move all of my work tables and resources over. Otherwise, I'll just be bouncing between dimensions frequently and chewing up the resources required for these various cakes, which for the void world is pulsating dust in order to refill, which that comes from uraninite, which would mean I have to actually mine more uraninite. But for the time being, let's head on over and check out this simulation chamber and how it works. So upstairs here, I've built a little bit of a layout where I've got the Ender IO capacitors feeding into a CEF, which needs this flux capacitor, which is why that's sitting there. And then that is where the machines will then just go across the frontier. I think I'll do 5 per CEF, because realistically the CEF only actually produces 4 amps worth of power. There is a 16 amp one, but it means you need to use better cables. And 4 amps means it can only run 4 machines at a time. So if I have 5 manual machines here, then that should work well. And then I'll put another CEF there with another 5 machines there. And 10 machines is roughly what I've got set up in the overworld at the moment. You can see I've got that power cable there, which, it's fine. I've actually got flight as well. I built the leadstone jetpack, which mostly is fairly simple, but the leadstone thrusters have a couple of steps, had to make steam dynamos for each of those. But yes, we've got flight. With hover though, you can see it does still go down even with hover on, so it's not as good as creative flight, but it's at least flight. And it allowed me to make this cable here, and I'll pretty much just run a cable along the length of the undersides of the chunk borders, so that the most of the wiring is hidden. I potentially could even move this wire here and plug it in right there, which would allow us to completely hide that, and then it would just be the capacitor sitting in the corner, which probably looks better, and I think I'll do that between episodes. Down here I've got the sugarcane farm It's double-sided. It's basically the same as the design upstairs with a couple of changes. Up there we've got an observer, which is the vanilla Minecraft observer. What that one does is it detects the block in front of it when there's been a change. So whenever Sugarcane arrives at that top, it detects that there's a change in that block. It then tells this hopper down here at the level of 2 to activate, which then gets us to Sugarcane and also the other side. Both observers are tied in together. The Sugarcane seems to be growing at about the same speed, but it's possible that occasionally you only get 3 instead of 4. I'm not overly fussed. Down here we've got a vacuum chest, which is pulling the Sugarcane and frankly anything else that gets thrown in the area, but that's only an issue when you're building. And so that's collecting the Sugarcane, popping it into this chest here, this crate, which is completely full, has a void upgrade, and okay, this setup, so yeah, completely full, void upgrade. So any spare Sugarcane is just being destroyed. That then feeds into the steam dynamos here, which feeds the steam into the turbines. Yep, turbines, which are then producing 160 RF per tick each. So we've got 320 there, feeding into a CEF here and a capacitor that's building up all the power. Currently it's draining, but that's because we've just put the flux capacitor into that CEF upstairs. So it's draining this in order to fill that flux capacitor. Once that flux capacitor is full, the battery, this capacitor bank, will refill, as will the one up top. This CEF feeds into these those two macerators. We've got a cobblestone generator here, which is just passively filling up this cobblestone drawer above it. The cobblestone feeds into this macerator, which turns it into gravel, and then that macerator turns that gravel into sand. I'll set up another one which will turn sand into dust, and then I'll put a chemical reactor which will turn dust into clay. The reason for that is because these pulsating polymer clays need clay as an input. They also need pulsating dust, which I'm not anywhere near automating, but that will be a future problem. For now though, let's test out this deep mob learning. So we'll just run a bit of conductive wire. I'm pretty sure it uses RF and not EU. We're about to find out. Please insert a data model to begin the simulation. So the simulation chamber, I made with pulsating meshes, which is just carbon mesh and pulsating dust. Coal dust and string makes carbon mesh. Dark steel, so that's just the LV machine hull we've made plenty of times, and then dark steel plates and normal primitive circuits. It's not that hard to make that one. The data model here, so to start with, you make a blank data model. That needs electrical steel, it needs a primitive circuit and pulsating mesh, which already done previously. The electrical steel plates, so for that we need electrical steel, which is made with just steel and silicon. But in order to get silicon, we had to use the electrolyzer on various dusts. We used clay dust to get some silicon, but it also gives us aluminium dust, sodium dust, and lithium dust. Those get the silicon dust, which has been used for a few different things already, but electrical steel is the main one. And then fine gold wires, that's the wire mill. If you run the gold wire through the wire mill a second time, it gives you fine gold wires. And so that gives us a blank data model. The blank data model then combined with a rotten flesh, which can be obtained arguably only from killing zombies. So I'm not quite sure on Peaceful how you're meant to do this unless the skeleton bone meal Oh, you get calcium dust from electrolyzing something that I was doing before as well. So that would be how you could start. You could get bone meal from calcium dust, which then can be compressed into bone, and then bone plus a black data model gets you a skeleton data model. So that would be one way that you could start, and then that you could get rotten flesh from pork chops, chickens, beef, plus an overworldian matter that you'd get from the skeleton. But what we have here, yeah, blank data model plus rotten flesh makes a zombie data model. Basic tier, and it needs to collect data to upgrade itself. It collects 1 data per kill, so if we could go around and kill 50 zombies in order to upgrade this one level. It also uses 64 RF per tick for a simulation. So if we put that into here, we now have a basic tier. It's done 0 iterations, and there's a chance of getting a pristine zombie matter. Cannot begin simulation, missing polymer medium. So let's put in a couple of polymer medium. That looks like it's probably a bit slower than a second for 10%. So it didn't manage to make a pristine in that particular run. But yes, launching runtime, starting an iteration, loading model from the chip, assessing threat level, engaged enemy, pristine, procurement failed. It's only got a 5% chance, so that would mean 5%, 20 runs has a likelihood of generating 1 pristine zombie matter. Here you go, simulation chamber, running with pulsating, basic tier 5%, advanced 10%, superior 20%, 30% once it gets too self-aware. So the various tiers, the number of times that mob is killed, I'm sorry, the number of times that mob is killed, it increases the tier of increases the tier of the zombie data model. And eventually, after 50 kills, the zombie data model moves up to advanced. At advanced, it then goes up to the 10% chance of getting a pristine zombie matter. However, every single run, we get an overworldian matter here. And if we take a look, it's done 6 iterations, or I think it's done 6 iterations, so it's collected data on 6 kills. 7 kills now. Alternatively, we could actually, as I say, we could kill actual zombies, and that would also increase this data collected. But we would need to put the data model into a deep learner and have that in our inventory when we killed the zombie. The deep learner can hold up to 4 different types of model, or multiple of the same type. So if we put 4 zombie data models in there, killed a zombie, we would get all 4 of them would go up by 1 point. There's data models for, I think, pretty much all of the hostile mobs, and this allows you to get the resources from without having to make a loot farm. So for example, if we look at this blaze data model, you can get blaze rods out of those pristine blaze matters. You can also get magma blocks and sulfur dust. The hellish matter here, though, also can be crafted into various other rewards, including blaze rods. So, in our current machine, we're fighting zombie, which is an overworld mob, so we're getting overworldian matter. That, combined with a slime ball or a rice slime ball and a string, plus 2 overworldian matter, would get us cobwebs. You can combine it with coal to make gunpowder. You can get spider eyes, arrows, bone, iron ingots, rotten flesh, potatoes, carrots, prismarine shards, grass blocks. Hellish matter, which would require netherrack, but you can get netherrack in the chemical reactor with dust block and lava. So you don't have to go to the nether to get the netherrack. And then these other overworldian matters are used to make the higher tier, effectively, data models. So the skeleton and zombie data models don't need any of this overworldian matter, but any of the others, the guardian, witch, spider, creeper, and thermal elemental, all need the overworldian matter in order to be created. Now, the reason I have been making this, well, one, need to do it to progress to the mod pack, but the iron ingots here, I have been very limited, I feel, on iron. I've been absolutely chewing through it, and I seem to always be going out mining primarily for iron. And so the overworldian matter combined with a rotten flesh, 4 overworldian matter, 1 rotten flesh makes you 8 iron ingots. Additionally, this pristine zombie matter, that can be put into a loot fabricator and would make 12 iron ingots. Eventually, this will be our only source for iron ingots, but for the time being, we don't actually have the loot fabricator. The energetic alloys would require the blast furnace in order to make... Yeah, requires the blast furnace, which I've not yet built, and the minimum tier that we would need of processor is this primitive processor. We can't use the one that we currently have access to, the primitive circuit. And so this primitive processor would arguably be fine to make, except for this here, the tiny pile of gallium dust. And the tiny pile of gallium dust you can get through centrifuging various dusts. And effectively, I just hadn't yet gotten to making the centrifuge. So we can't yet process this pristine zombie matter, but we do have there that overworldian matter. I've also got 12 spare pulsating polymer plate there, so we'll just get this to keep running. But those combined with a rotten flesh will get me a chunk of iron ingots. I will also just quickly though make that cobweb, because the cobweb is required to make the spider data model, and the spider will allow us to get easy access to string and also copper. Copper is another thing that I seem to always be running out of, and string is not the most convenient. It would... Currently I'm converting wool into string when I need string, but that is a very manual process. Once we get the spider up and running, that will give us easy access to lots of string and lots of copper. Alternatively, I believe we can also... Can't make string... the cobwebs can be converted into string. So we can also make more string with this overworldian matter as well. There we go, overworldian matter complete. Another thing you can do is you can actually eat it for experience, but for the time being I'm going to be using it for the drops that you can get out of it. The various different... No rush to get these all done leveled up, but they do provide a good source of some of the basic resources. So eventually we'll be looking to get all of these data models up and running, and then each of them will also have its own simulation chamber, maybe multiple, depending on how fast we feel that we need the different outputs that they can produce. Interestingly, we've hit 3 pristine zombie matters, so we've had another 2 in just 8 runs, but obviously it's a chance, it's not a guarantee either way. It's currently at 28 out of 50 data collected. I'm going to need another 18, I think, pulsating polymer clay for this to actually get fully done. The thing I'm wondering about though is how to automatically get this pulsating dust without having to keep mining for it. I believe that there's possibility of getting it from centrifuging different dusts. So those are both uraninite dust, so ignore that. Pitch blend will give uraninite dust, so we've got actually quite a lot of pitch blend sitting back at the base, so that could be a possibility to get quite a bit more for the time being. But I think eventually ender pearl dust here, which is made out of ender pearls being pulverized, is what I suspect will be the end goal. But to get that, we would need the ender dragon, no, enderman, and or alternatively we could do it with extraterrestrial matter, which needs an ender pearl and hellish matter. Hellish matter needs the overworldian matter and netherrack, which easily could be made. So possibly that's a avenue we could go down and make the extraterrestrial matter, but I think probably we want to actually get fighting some of these extraterrestrial creatures in order to get the extraterrestrial matter. The Enderman looks actually pretty simple. It just needs lots of this extraterrestrial matter, so we probably want to get a nether creature spawning, probably blazers to start with, and then we will be able to combine up the extraterrestrial matter and get the Enderman data model going. But that's quite a long way in the future. For now, we're just looking to run this zombie and the spiders. We'll also run the other normal data models and level them up so that we get more pristine matter, but the pristine matter will require a blast furnace in order to actually be processed, and we're going to run into power problems before very long and all of those sorts of things. So it's going to need quite a lot of scaling up before we actually even try to go to the next tier, which is the nether. For the time being though, pretty happy with that. I'm liking how this mod works, and we've got automatic power down here producing the basics. As I say, I'll put a macerator here to make dust, and then I'll put a chemical reactor with a crate next to it that I put pristine matter into, which will automatically make the pulsating polymer clay. And then it'll just be a matter of me figuring out a solution to getting the pulsating dust, which is going to be the limiting step for the time being. That aside, so the applied energistics is a direction that we could head in, or alternatively the blast furnace is where we is the other thing that we'll need to make in order to actually advance. Whereas applied energistics is just convenient, and it's also only storage. It doesn't give access to the crafting side of things, which is further down in the, I think, early game, because you can see we've hit a couple of these quests up here, so it looks like it's going to progress this way, and so the auto crafting is late in the early game phase. So while we're still in the beginning, AE2, I'll get it up and running eventually, but it's just a storage system for now. I think the priority is to get the blast furnace up and running. Meanwhile, I'll have a quick read of this. I'll build these various components, and then I will see you in a minute. And welcome back. For me, that's probably been, I can't even remember how long it's been, 40 minutes or so. For you, it's been no time at all. I've made all of the various components required for the blast furnace, and I have built a new platform out here and put a capacitor in place as well. So where's my CEF? It's got to be a CEF there. CEF can go in the same spots. It needs to face the other way. There we go. And a flux capacitor. There you go, it's full of power. The blast furnace is going to need a couple of input hatches, energy input hatches, and then I think the front will be there. And I've been reading about how to make it. So fluid, these input and outputs can be sort of anywhere on the layer, but the middle two layers are these copper nickel coil blocks. And it's obviously hollow in the middle. That's why you're too short. And then input on the right here, output on the left. But those can be however you want to place them. That's just how I'm doing it currently. And maybe we'll find out that I actually want the input over here somewhere. I think my phone just thought that I was talking to it, but that looks good. Getting power, max temp 1800K, max EU per tick 128. Okay, so the aluminium dust, I remember that showing up in the book. First of which is aluminium is going to be important in the immediate future, power to smelt more advanced materials. So I took a look at this aluminium dust, which we got from the electrolyzer, where the clay dust to get the silicon also gave me some aluminium dust. That aluminium dust can be smelted in the blast furnace here with no fluid or anything to make aluminium ingots. So I assume we put them into the input slot there. It's running. I think it's using I'm not sure how much power it's actually using. I can't see. Every now and then I'm not sure what the draw is here. I don't see a way to tell, because it looks like it can take 128 EU, which would be times 4 for 512 RF, and downstairs here, my bit 512. This is only making 320, so it does seem. Oh, these are running out of power. They'd obviously completely backed up with power. So there we go. It is using up the stored power there. I'm just going to go quickly fix that hole before I fall into it without noticing. There we go. And so I would suspect it's using this 128 EU and draining the power slowly. But that's fine. It's processing into making this aluminium ingot. I feel like I put 16 in, and I've already got 4 aluminium ingots. That looks like it doesn't add up, unless I had 18. I'm guessing that I had 18. But, so we've made the blast furnace now, we've got aluminium ingots, we can make MV machine holes and start to progress into MV, I guess. But other than that, we can also make the energetic alloys now, which those were used for the loot fabricator. And so we can use the loot fabricator to start processing these pristine zombie matters into iron ingots. Otherwise, the other thing I was thinking that I would probably make is I don't see it around. I think you can use the blast furnace. Let me take a look. Creosote oil, distillation, distillery, fluid extractor, distillation tower, pyrolyse. Right, yeah, so you need to make the pyrolyse oven in order to get creosote oil. And so which converts logs into charcoal and creosote oil, or it can make ash and heavy oil. I'm not quite sure on that part, but the creosote oil will be needed reasonably soon. I did notice here we've got the pyrolyse oven, so first we need to make these primitive processes, and to make those we're going to need to do some ore processing for byproducts. Specifically, we need to get gallium. I'm just going to clear that one out. There we go. And here we go. So need some gallium. To get that, we could use some sphalerite, which we can get. I don't think I've found any sphalerite yet, but the question is whether I don't think there's an ore of it. So I'm going to have to do a bit of looking to impure. Crushed sphalerite. So crushed sphalerite makes impure. Crushed sphalerite comes from, there you go, sphalerite ore, which doesn't have an OmniCoin recipe. So I am going to have to look into how to do this one. Throwing impure piles of sphalerite into cauldrons is the first way of obtaining sphalerite, which can be electrolyzed as a good source of gallium. So sphalerite ore spawns in zinc veins. Okay, so there is sphalerite ore. I just need to go hunting for it. And then that will allow me to get the gallium, which will then finally allow me to get access to the processing patterns. But we've now unlocked access to the loot fabricator here, and as I said before, I'll work on getting some more data models. But all that aside, this power system probably needs an expansion as well. I'll have to look to see what options there are. I can always just expand this. It's this sugar cane box is completely full, so it's producing more than this needs, but I don't think it's producing double what this needs. I could always just expand this out. That's why I've got this space here. I could at least make it 4 times the size that it is without exceeding the edge of the chunk there, the platform, and that would allow me to quadruple the power setup that we've got here. But possibly there's another option that's good as well. I did note we've got access here to the ender pump and ender tanks, which it suggests pumping lava. You've got the magmatic dynamo, so that's also a possibility. As I said before, I'll also automate the creation of dust here and the creation of clay, and then in the next episode we'll probably start working towards the applied energistics storage system, and then I could put the applied energistics system here in the void and move over all the storage for all of these things over here, instead of having to worry with all these chests and crates. It could all just go into the applied energistics system. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.